Good evening, everyone. Today, in this short 1 hour, we are going to learn about what blockchain is and what are its use cases. How do we make use of this in our day-to-day life? Everybody is interested in blockchain nowadays. We hear a lot of things happening in this space. NFTs are being sold for millions of dollars, and Elon Musk, uh, and there are also different applications that are coming up. There has been a recent boom in the market. All of this is happening in this very short period of last 6 months, and this has created curiosity among younger generations, right? And new people are also curious about let me see what is this. I want to learn about it, and that's why I'm here to tell you all what blockchain is and how can we make use of this. Okay, I'll be going through the session for the first 1 hour. In the last 15 to 20 minutes, I'll give you all a chance to ask questions. So if you have any questions, make note of it. In the end, you'll be able to ask those questions too. Okay, clear? A short introduction about me. I'm Shrikant Arva. I'm working as a full stack developer for over 7 years right now, and also I'm a blockchain trainer. Okay, I've been working as a blockchain trainer for last 2 years, close to 2 years, and this is my LinkedIn profile. If you are interested to connect with me, you can connect. That is one small brief introduction. How did I get into blockchain? What piqued my curiosity is like you all, I got into this in the last previous one that was around 2017. I invested some money in this and I lost a lot of it. So that even though I was not a very good trader, but as I'm a technical person, I have uh, focused more on the technology than on the markets. That is where I started learning all these concepts, watching a lot of YouTube videos, reading from the online articles and joining communities. This is how I've built up my knowledge in this blockchain area for past few years. Okay, thank you for having me here. Let's go. What is blockchain? Okay, assume everybody in this uh, class in this session today is a node in a blockchain, is a computer in a blockchain network. This is not a client server network. In a client server, I hope you understand what client server network is, right? You search something on Google, you open the Google website, you search something, and Google is going to serve you. Google is the server, you are the client, right? There is all the data is residing with the server. It can respond to you with the answer or not. But this is not a client server model network. This is a peer-to-peer network. All 50 of us in this meeting are peers. There is no master, there is no slave. All of us are almost equally connected to each other and have equal responsibilities. There is no one node that is controlling majority of the information, and there is no one node that has more power over other nodes that you cannot store this information, you cannot store that information, you cannot give this information to others. There is nothing like that. All of us are almost equally uh, powerful networks, powerful parts of the network. We are called nodes. So till the end of the session, assume we are all 30 or 50 of us in this meeting are all of us are a single node, not combined. There are 50 nodes, okay? There are 50 nodes in this blockchain network. Clear? And we are all connected in a peer-to-peer way. Peer-to-peer is just like which do you know any other peer-to-peer network? The most common peer-to-peer network that we all are familiar with is the torrents network, right? In torrents also is a distributed file sharing system where there is no single server, there is no single entity that is controlling things. Whatever is available, uh, whatever the data that is people are ready to share, only that information will be available to you. So let's say you download the latest movie, maybe the Friends Union, you download it, okay, and you are still seeding it. So someone close by to you, someone close by to you wants to download that movie as well. What he is going to do? He's going to seed. He's going to leech from your computer. He's going to take parts of the movie from your computer and few more parts from the other close by computers. And when all these bits and pieces come and join in his computer, and all of them are ordered in a particular way, he's going to be able to watch the movie. Okay, that is a peer-to-peer network. Torrents is a peer-to-peer network. That is what we all know so well. Like if you are is to play games, multiplayer Call of Duty games when connecting each other's LANs, that is a peer-to-peer network. Okay, I hope we all are clear of what blockchain is. Blockchain is a peer-to-peer network. First off, it is a digital chain made of blocks of information hosted on a decentralized and distributed network of computers that cannot be altered. So this distributed network, what we are saying, is the peer-to-peer. Is a distributed network what we are all looking at. Then what does this distributed network contain? It contains blocks. Okay, it is a database. It's as simple as to explain. This is a simple database that is copied in all of our systems. All 50 of us in this meeting, all of us have the same database in our computers. And this database is not structured like any other databases. It is structured in blocks. First one block will be created, and then the second block will be created, third block. So each block is going to contain certain information. Once these blocks are created and added to the blockchain, it cannot be altered. Clear? Now you understood what a distributed network is. And what is this distributed network sharing? We are not sharing movies, we are not sharing games online, games. What are we sharing? We are sharing information of transactions. It is like a bookkeeping record, like any stores, any of us who have any shops, right? We would be having those ledgers where we keep account of how much of inventory is available, or how much money I have given to this person, how much money this person has to give me back, whom do I owe and who owes me. So all these transactions are recorded in this. Clear? This is recorded in the form of blocks. One block is created, then the other block will be created, then the next block will be created. Once these blocks are created and added to the chain, okay, as these are forming a chain. These individual blocks combined together are forming a chain. Once those have been added to the chain, they cannot be removed. Any transaction, any information, once it gets onto this data into this database, it cannot be altered. You can only append new information to it, but you cannot change whatever has been written. So, as we all are like computer science students here, so any programming language you learn, you have 4 operations, right? CRUD, that is called CRUD operations: create, read, update, and delete. Right? Those are the 4 operations that we usually perform when we are working with any programming language to learn, just to start off when we're starting off. Those are the 4 main operations that we learn. But here we can create, we can read, but we cannot update and delete. So create and read, that is only we can do. Creating is adding or appending and reading. Instead of create, we can say appending, adding new information to the chain. That is possible. But altering the information inside the blockchain is not possible. Why is it not possible? What is so different about it? What is so new about it? It is cryptographically secure. There is a lot of cryptography involved, and there's a digital timestamping that has been put into place here, that will not allow you to alter this. If anyone tries to alter it, it can be easily caught. So now, what are we? We are 50 people in the network who all of us have in our computers a database of blocks. Correct? So let's say there's someone who has a different record. All of us have the same copy. It's not that I have one copy, someone else has the other copy. No, all of us have the same copy in our network. And someone tries to add an invalid transaction or try to manipulate the blockchain so that he wants to try and hack into our systems and spoil the network. To do that, first he has to do a lot of computational work to alter his own blockchain. Then he has to convince everybody else to accept that his invalid blockchain is the right blockchain. That is going to be very, very difficult and it's close to impossible. Clear? If you have any doubts, please make a note of them. I'll be answering them at the end of the session. Okay? Moving on, how does the blockchain work? That is what I've explained right now. One party does a transaction. So let's say I want to transact with Aditya. I want to send $100 to Aditya. So that is one transaction. The transaction is created and I'm going to sign the transaction that I'm willing to send $1 to Aditya's account. And I provide his address, my signature and all these things will be there. So that is transmitted over the network. This blockchain network that we 50 of us is this. This is the peer-to-peer connected network. So this peer-to-peer network, what happens is there is some of the people, some of them who are going to validate the transaction. Okay, some of the network, some of the people in this network are going to take additional responsibility that I'm going to validate. I take the responsibility of validating the transaction. So they take that responsibility and validate the transactions. What do they get for validating the transaction? They get reward. They get transaction fees, and also sometimes in some blockchains they're going to get mining reward as well. Okay, so they get, and once they validate a transaction, okay, this is a valid transaction. Srikanth really has $1 in his account to send it to Aditya. That is there, and also did Srikanth really agree to send $1 from his account to Aditya's account? That another check will also be verified. Once all the things have been verified, this transaction is put into a block. Okay, this transaction is put into a block, and this block will be added to the existing block. So right now we have previously created blocks right here. This is a newly created block that will be added to the blockchain. So these miners, they are called miners or the validators. They create these new blocks and say, hey guys, I have created a new block that is block number 11. Please add it to the blockchain. Till now we have only block number till 10. Now in the 11th block, I have validated a few more transactions. New transactions have been able to verify. And I've created block and I've cryptographic puzzle. So please verify this newly created block and accept it into your blockchain. He's going to broadcast it to everyone in the network. So every one of us, what we are going to do, we are going to receive the new block that he has created. Then we verify whether he has actually solved the puzzle. Has he made any mistake, or he is doing anything invalid to the blockchain? So all these things, once we verify, we accept. If it's a valid block, we are going to accept into our blockchain, and now the size of the blockchain will change from 10 blocks to the 11th block. Clear?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Next, let's see what all are the contents of it. So now we have been talking about, you know one thing, that the blocks contain transactions, right? There are transactions, list of transactions, newly verified transactions. The transaction that was not verified till now will not be there. Means which are already verified will be created. So new transactions which are to be verified which are yet unverified. My transaction with Aditya is still pending. Someone has to verify, validate whether the transaction is uh, valid or not. In banking system, what happens? The bank is going to take that responsibility. But here, there is no single centralized entity. That is what blockchains are going to give us control over it. But there is no centralized entity. There is no centralized intermediary like banks or any third-party aggregators. All this, there is no central third party. It is a distributed network of people who are putting the trust instead of bank or anything. They're putting the trust on the technology. If the trust is moving out from an individual entity like a company or a service, it is moving towards a technology. Now you don't have to trust any company to do what you wanted. You can trust this technology itself. If something is built on this technology and it is verified, it has been built properly, then you can trust it. You don't have to worry about losing your money. You don't have to worry about uh, any insecurities over using this. Okay? That is, now let's see, consider this is a block N. What all does this block contain? It contains a list of transactions. It may be one transaction, it may be 1,000 transactions, depending on the network, how frequently this network has been used. Based on that, whatever is the possible size of transaction that can be added in one single block, that will be added. So all unconfirmed transactions are taken and put into the new block. Plus, it will have a block header. These are the main details of a header. What is this? This is Merkle root, timestamp, previous block hash. This is one of the important concept, previous block hash. So if this is block number n, it is going to have the hash of the previous block. That is block number n minus 1. Correct? Hash of the previous block. Plus it has version, bits and nonce. These are other detailed information. This is going to store the hash of n minus 1 block. What is hash? To explain hash in simple words, you can think of hash as a fingerprint of any digital entity. It could be text, it could be an emoji, it could be a video, it could be an image, it could be anything. Okay, that will be that can be have its own unique fingerprint. We are going to create a unique fingerprint for any digital entity using this hashing. Hashing algorithms are there. There are many multiple algorithms. So one of them will be used here to create a unique fingerprint to the block. So the previous block's unique fingerprint will be stored here, and this block also has its own unique fingerprint. That is hash of this block. This is the hash of block number n. And block height. What is block height? Block height is nothing but how many blocks have been created before this or below this. Okay, if you want to take height as a vertical aspect, then how many blocks have been created below this? If this is block, then n1 blocks have been created. So that is what 10. There have been 9 blocks or blocks created. Block number blocks. That is the block. You understood what block hash is, right? How this block hash is created? It is a mixture of all of this, all the transactions in the block, all the timestamp, nonce, bits. These information is taken together, combined, and passed it through a hashing function. Once we pass it through a hashing function, we get the hash of the block. Clear? Unique fingerprint of this block. So once we get that unique fingerprint, it is so unique that even if we change a single bit, like from a capital letter A to small letter A, one full stop is changed to comma to full stop, anything you change, one single bit has been changed, it is going to generate a totally different fingerprint. It does not resemble the previous one at all. That is hashing. So with that, if someone tries to tamper with the block, then we immediately get to know that okay, somebody has tampered with it and the block hash of the block is not matching. Clear? Okay. These are the contents of a block. Each block contains usually all the transactions, unverified transactions that needs to be verified. So once they are verified, they will be added here. Correct? Then the block header as well as the block identifier. These three things will be, these are the major parts of a block. Now let's understand how these blocks are forming the chain. Okay, so this is how the chain are formed. As I've said in the previous slide, the root hash or the hash of the previous block will be stored in the next block, right? Now this is block number 11. Block number 11 has the hash of block number 10. Here, this was the root hash here. Now the hash of the block number 11 will be stored as the previous hash in block number 12. As they are stored like this, what happens is we are forming a chain. We are forming a reference to the previous block. So, do you remember a data structure that resembles this? Can you tell me which data structure resembles? Yeah, linked list, exactly. Exactly. They resemble linked lists. So because of this, a chain has been formed. Now, if someone tries to tamper with this transaction in block number 10, if someone tries to change the transaction from, let's say, my transaction to Aditya is this transaction too of $1, and someone changes it from $1 to $10, then the root hash changes. Root hash of this block changes, then the previous hash of which was stored here will not match. This will not match because root hash of this has changed, and the previous hash of that was stored in block number 11 does not match with the hash of the block number 10. That is where the blockchain breaks, and we immediately identify that somebody has tried to tamper with it. There has been something going, some golmaal is happening. Yeah. Yeah. So that is how we get the property of immutability, right? Once we write something onto a blockchain, it cannot be erased. It is as if you're carving it on a stone. It cannot, you cannot erase it. You cannot update it. You can only append the new values to it. Then new values should be added in the next transactions. Okay, for this example, what I've taken is an example of a transaction, like money transaction from my account to Aditya's account. Let's say in blockchain, transaction could mean anything. It need not be a transaction of money. It could be a transaction of asset, like a piece of land has been transferred from one account to the other account. Someone is selling a painting from selling his ownership of the painting to somebody else. Somebody is buying some digital goods, or somebody is getting paid in terms of cryptocurrencies. Okay, because they have done certain activity, they have watched some ad. There are platforms that are going to give you. So, and also if you do mining, then you could get cryptocurrencies. That is one of the other way to earn cryptocurrencies. Yeah. Okay. Moving on. So we have discussed this, right? Decentralization. Where do we get the? These are the features of a blockchain. Decentralization. It's a peer-to-peer network. So there is no single authority. No, all 50 of us in this meeting are individually equally responsible. No one person is higher than the other. All of us are working together to keep this network running, and we are incentivized for it. We are not doing as a charity to run this network. We get paid. Okay. So as the value of this cryptocurrency increases, if you are holding certain cryptocurrency, then you will be, if you really believe that cryptocurrency is worth, let's say Bitcoin, right, is really useful and it has really good use cases in today's world, then you create a node for it and try to help the network. Then you will be incentivized. And other way, you could be incentivized is by validating transactions. In a centralized system, what happens? There is the centralized authority that validates all the things. That is going to keep your money secure. That is going to take care of things. But here, there is no, as there is no centralized authority, we all have to share this responsibility to validate the transactions. That whoever takes that responsibility will be incentivized for that. And immutability. Immutability we achieve by keeping it cryptographically secure. Just like I have told you, right? Hash of the each block is stored in the next block, and it is very difficult to get those hashes. There's a lot of work that goes into creating those blocks. Okay? Once uh, it is written, if someone does to tamper with already created block, it we can identify it in a second that there has been someone who has tried to tamper with this blockchain and there has been a breakage. So when that happens, what do we do? Others who have the proper validator with whose data is not breaking, they could share their blockchain and they could accept. In terms of a centralized system, what happens? What happens is, let's say there is a banking system, and if that get hacked, that's a centralized one, then there could be loss of service. Their systems may go offline for some days, for some hours. But it happened with these cloud providers recently. Correct. But with a distributed network, even if few of us, even if 20 of us go offline, then the network will still be running. Correct, because other nodes which are running, they are going to facilitate the network to stay up and online and working. That is another benefit of decentralization. Immutability, with immutability, what happens? We get tamper proof. Nobody will be able to tamper with this. That is one really important feature that we are getting here. A tamper proof system, tamper proof storage of records and transactions. The third thing is transparency. Transparency is not available in all blockchains, but when we talk about blockchains, we usually discuss about the public blockchains, like Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, and others. There are so many, thousands and thousands of them. So we usually focus on them. They are public. They are transparent because we can see what is happening in that network. Even you don't have to, let's say you go to a bank and ask for Aditya's transactions. Will the bank give Aditya's transactions to you unless you are Aditya? Will the bank give you? No, right? But here I'll show you that here the bank, here you can see transactions of others. It is public. There is nothing hidden here, but they are pseudonymized. Okay, they are not we are not revealing their exact name. They are anonymized. Actually. Coming to the next part of infrastructure, how this was built today, how did it uh, become what it is today, right? To compare with that, I have a parallel of existing internet. So it started off with TCP/IP, file transfer protocol, HTTP, and DNS. So these are the main protocols. What are protocols? They are the rules. They are the standards that have been written for effective communication. So if you want to use a website, you have to use HTTP or HTTPS, right? So that is the common communication protocol that is being used for web transactions. Then comes a network. network. That is ISPs. What is internet service providers? Like we have Airtel, Geo, and all these things. What are they doing? They are creating towers in the nearby areas and giving you the network, giving you the access to make use of these protocols. That is the second layer. Coming to the third point is the tipping point. When did this become so powerful? When did people realize with this we can do wonders? That is with the existing internet technology, that was email. Till then, people, if they wanted to send information from one place to another, they would write it in a letter and give it to the postman, and post service would take at least a few days to deliver the message to someone else from in the other part of the country. But with emails, they were able to do it instantly. Maybe at that time, not instantly, but within 10 minutes, they would be able to do the transfer, to the send the message to someone else who is in the other part of the country. That was the that was the pot of gold people identified. Yes, this really has worth. This can do wonders for us. That is where people started imagining possibilities what could be done. Then on top of it started over there, but soon we built a lot of things, right? The streaming video service, Netflix, Amazon Prime, all of it. Data sharing, we have cloud providers right now, cloud computing. Uh, all of these are built on top of that. These are the applications that took years and years, and as the technology has been advanced, they have been improving. New services were created. At least I think 5 years ago, or maybe 8 years ago, we were not having streaming services so good, right? Even YouTube streaming was not before 4G came. Streaming was very difficult. Once 4G has come, that is again the network. Network has also improved. 4G has come. We all are able to stream videos. We are able to watch live matches right now. I think India versus New Zealand matches being delayed due to rain. Let's see. Let's. Uh, so, what is the internet as of today? Internet is a innovation in information transfer. This is where we are able to transfer information in an instant. This is an innovation. This is a radical innovation in terms of information. But coming to blockchain, this is the blockchain stuff. Here the protocols are Bitcoin, Ethereum, and IPFS. These are all protocol levels. Bitcoin is a network also. Bitcoin is a protocol as well. Bitcoin has its own set of rules. It is creating its own standards. Ethereum has its own standards. ERC20, ERC721 token standards are there. Then EIP, few more standards have been coming up recently. Then there is network. So the 50 of us who are actually creating node, keeping our computer on and supporting this network, that is also being done right now with Bitcoins, Ethereum, and others. These are called as the people who take extra responsibility to do it, to validate the transaction. They are called miners, and also there are validators using staking pools, full nodes. These are all people facilitating the network to grow. They are all providing us network so that we can access it. Tipping point was the Bitcoin. Bitcoin. Why Bitcoin uh, is so popular? Because let me give you an example. Let me ask you a question. What is the fastest way to transfer money from New York to London? What is the fastest way to transfer money from New York to London? Anyone? If you want to have any ideas, you can give. Before the advent of Bitcoin, obviously. Before the advent of Bitcoin, the fastest way to transfer money from New York to London is to take a flight from New York, go to London, give the money to that person, and come back. That was the fastest way. But with Bitcoin, as advent of Bitcoin, we can transfer money from one place to another in 10 minutes across borders. Even today, if you want to receive any international payments, it is going to take you 2 days from the time they have transferred until it reaches your account, and it is also quite costly. They're going to deduct around maybe $20 to $30 minimum, or whatever may be the. They're going to deduct certain amount, and then could you please be on mute? Thank you. Even today, it is going to take around 2 days to reach our account. Correct. In this case, Bitcoin can transfer money from one place to another, wherever you are in the world, in 10 minutes at fraction of the cost. At fraction of the cost that you are paying to. That is a use case, and that is a tipping point when people realize this has value. This can do wonders. On top of that, then the second application universe came into picture, like smart contracts, distributed computing, tokenizing. Everything is getting tokenized today, right? Every digital art is getting tokenized. People are creating their paintings and selling it as an NFTs, tokens. We can tokenize a piece of land and sell it as a token online. We can let's say I think I have a let's say I have huge hotel, and I'm going to sell this hotel in pieces. I'm going to tokenize each room in a hotel as a uh, as a token, and I'm going to sell this to someone. I'm not going to sell the complete property. It's You may not have enough money to buy the complete hotel, which five-star hotel, but you would have enough money to buy one single room in that hotel, right? That is what we can do today. These and these applications were not available back then. We are tokenizing the whole world. This is then innovation in value transfer. We are transferring value, not just information. We are able to transfer value from one person to another in a much faster and much efficient. Okay. Yeah. Now we have already told that we are going to verify these transactions. But how do we all come to a common conclusion that I actually sent, let's say, miner may say that Shrikant actually sent money to Aditya of $1. This is his account. But all of us in this network, not everybody will be talking to each other at the same time. Okay, but all of us have to come to the same conclusion that either the transaction is valid or invalid. It doesn't matter whether what you choose, but all of us have to choose the same thing. That is what consensus is. How participants of the network come to agree on a public record. I cannot say in my book that Shrikant has actually transferred $1 to Aditya, and in Aditya's book, he cannot write that the transaction was failed. That should not happen. What should happen is either all of us, every single 50 records in this, all the 50 records that we have, all of us should have the same entry. Same entry. That is when we have identical copies of the information. Correct? If one person has some information, some other person has some other information, then it does not match. Then we're not really building anything creative, innovating anything. Yeah. So that is not a blockchain. That is just a normal peer-to-peer network where you're not really building. Here we are able to build something on top of this because there is a consensus. Either all of us agree that something is right or something is wrong. To do consensus, there are multiple methods. Okay. First, there are two methods I'm going to discuss. That is proof of work and proof of stake. Proof of work is mining. This is where the concept of mining, miners, and all come into picture. Bitcoin and a few other blockchains are also involved in mining. It's a computing a complex equation to meet the public record. Someone validates my transaction that this is a valid transaction. Why should you believe that what he is saying? Correct? Okay, he's saying this is a valid transaction. I am a miner. I'm saying this transaction from Shrikant to Aditya is a valid transaction. Why should you believe him? What, you don't know that person. You don't know him individually at all. But why would you believe him? You would believe him because he has not just validated this transaction, he has also solved a cryptographic puzzle. Solving that cryptographic puzzle is a big task. It is going to take a lot of effort, lot of time, and not everybody will be able to do that. If someone who is dedicated, really dedicated to do that, only they will be successful in solving that puzzle. And that solving that puzzle will have this transaction Shrikant Aditya involved in. That gives you a proof that okay, he has actually done the work, he has solved this. You can verify whether he has actually solved the cryptographic puzzle or not. So you can assume this cryptographic puzzle as a Sudoku puzzle. Okay, here to solve the Sudoku puzzle, it takes a lot of time. Right? It could be easy, medium, hard. Maybe let's say it's an expert level Sudoku puzzle. Those kind of puzzles only will be given right now. Okay, he has to invest that much money. Okay, that much time, everything he has to invest, his brain power, and everything he has to invest to solve that cryptographic puzzle. And he should be the first one to solve that. He should be the fastest one to solve the cryptographic puzzle, this Sudoku puzzle. Once he solved that, minimum, even if it's an expert level puzzle, it will take around 10 minutes to solve it. Correct? For an expert to solve an expert level puzzle, it will take around 10 minutes to solve. But once he solves it, how long will it take for us to verify? It takes seconds. We just have to verify whether there is 1 to 9 or possible combinations. It is in all the squares, horizontally and vertically. We can verify it in seconds. That is what, similar to that is what mining proof of work is. Okay, you have to solve this complex cryptographic puzzle to prove that you are actually validating the transaction. In proof of stake, what happens is I'm going to have certain cryptocurrency. I'm going to keep keep that cryptocurrency as a deposit, as a stake. And as I've kept that much cryptocurrency as a stake, I'm going to receive the license to validate the transactions. Okay? Any new transaction that is coming into the picture, those transactions will be, some of the transactions I'm going to get, I'll verify those transactions. By verifying those transactions, what do I get? I get transaction fees. Okay, that I'll be earning. But if I try to do something wrong to the network, and if I try to add an invalid transaction, pass an invalid transaction as a valid transaction, they are going to deduct the money from whatever I've kept as stake. Correct? If I've kept $50 as my staking amount, then $25 will be deducted immediately if I try to do any single something wrong to the network. That is what this mining solving puzzles also is like. To do good work, it is going to take effort, but if you do something good to the network, you will be rewarded. Even in staking also, if you validate the transaction, if you validate the good transactions properly, then you will be rewarded. But if you try to harm the network, if you try to pass an invalid transaction as a valid transaction, or try to harm the network by doing some kind of attacks and things, then it is being made sure that you never succeed in it, first off. Second, it's also made so complex that it is not worth doing such kind of attacks. Here in proof of stake, if he tries to validate a transaction properly, he may get around $1 maximum. Okay, but as he tried to add an invalid transaction to the blockchain, he lost $25. Right. So when risk of losing is so high, you try to be good here. So why to earn $1 instead of to earn $1? Why would I lose $25? Right. So doing that, what they're going to do, they're going to play along with the network and earn rewards. So if you're good to the network, you will be incentivized. That is the game theory part, that concept that have been involved in building this blockchain. That is why all these blockchains have cryptocurrencies. You need not have a cryptocurrency to run a blockchain. Okay, it is not really necessary. But to run a decentralized public peer-to-peer network, you need people, common people, to be involved in it. That is where uh, these cryptocurrencies come into place. These are incentivizing people to do good to the network, to build the network, to build network security, to build transparency into the network, to keep the network, immutable. All these things requires effort from people. So people are not gonna simply give effort. That is why these cryptocurrencies are there. They are rewarding these activities performed by individuals or group of people. Okay, one more disclaimer here. Ethereum is still on proof of work, but it is soon going to move to proof of stake. Ethereum is still using proof of work, but by the end of this year or soon, they are going to move to proof of stake. That is why I've given Ethereum as an example here. And a better example, if you want, it would be Cardano. Cardano or ADA is a better example for proof of stake that have been. They are the initiatives of proof of stake. Smart contracts. Now we are directly jumping to smart contracts. Smart contracts, we cannot build smart contracts on Bitcoin as of now. Okay, uh, but we can build smart contracts. What are the smart contracts? The smart contracts is nothing but small pieces of code which we can write and deploy on top of the blockchain network. Okay, we can assume Ethereum as an electricity provider. Ethereum has, laid those cables and provided electricity to all the houses. Now, what I need to do is I need not, lay again those electricity cables to every house to provide my service. I only need to build a bulb. I only need to build a fan or TV. So that level, that is the higher level, right? So I'm not really worried about building the network. So on top of this network, on top of the uh, Ethereum network, people are building applications. To build applications, we have to write our own code, and Ethereum supports to write those code. Bitcoin does not support as of now to write any code there. Okay, but Ethereum from the beginning it was built for this purpose, to write applications for people to make use of their of that platform to create their own applications. There are thousands of applications that are out there. Smart contract is we are writing pieces of code and deployment on the blockchain. So one more best use case is whatever is written in a smart contract it is executed. Okay, it cannot be changed. As we are using blockchain, it cannot be changed. Smart contracts are immutable. So that gives us security that okay, whatever they are saying today, they are going to say the same thing tomorrow as well, or 10 years after also. That it remains same. Today, the terms and services of may say something else. Tomorrow they may say some other thing. Right? It could change over time. But here it doesn't happen. If you're using the same contract, even after 10 years, it is going to work in the same manner. That also adds its own challenges, right? So here is a very simple example. The right holder publishes the ownership of the information on the blockchain. So he is going to, let's say, is going to publish the ownership of a song. I own the ownership of this particular song. He is going to publish it onto the blockchain. So once he has published it onto the blockchain, so whoever wants to use this service, okay, whoever wants to use this service, he is going to use the service using the smart contract. He's going to pay certain money, add certain money into the smart contract, and try to use it. So when he tries to do that, that royalty for using the service will be directly going to the user. Whoever has, whoever was the person who had created that particular property, copyright or whatever. Then that is what they are rewarded. So everything is out in open. Okay, how much money is going to go to the owner? How much percentage is going to go to this person? Everything is written in clear words. There is no separate tracking that needs to happen. There is no auditing that needs to take place for this system because this information is public and secure. Correct? Auditing did not even happen because so you do not keep separate functions or separate databases to maintain auditing and logs. Everything is a log in itself. So whoever wants to use the service is going to make use of the smart contract and try to make use of the service. So by he's going to pay the smart contract certain amount for using the service, then that money will be given to the person of the whoever owns the rights. As simple as that. We can build. There are many music apps that are coming up like this, and uh, you can sell NFTs. NFTs are also work in a similar way. You're giving the ownerships to people. These are the two hot topics that we are talking about: DeFi, decentralized finance, and NFT, non-fungible tokens. Okay. Uh, So, what is DeFi? What is decentralized finance? Decentralized finance is nothing but what are the financial banking? What does bank provide us? It provides a savings account. It provides us loan, car loan, housing loan, personal loans. All these ones it provides. We can insurance is also banking function. We can do FTs. We can do RDs. All these things are banking instruments, right? The banking instruments. All of them are provided in a decentralized way. And this is much more efficient and much more cost effective for every person. So if you're using a decentralized finance, you'll be earning around 12% of saving on a savings account. Can you tell me one bank that gives you around 12% say interest on a savings account? Nobody. No bank is going to give you 12%. Some saving accounts may go up to 21% also. It's possible. This is much more efficient. You can take flash loans. You can take loans in an instant. Instant means actually instant. There is no KYC involved. There are other applications which don't even ask you for KYC. If you keep certain things as collateral, you can take loans any second. But you have to keep collateral also. That is there. Many decentralized finance applications are coming. Charity, okay, uh, can be done. Lot every banking facility that you can think of that can be made into a DeFi, decentralized finance. Can you name one financial service that has not asked you to do KYC before joining their platform? Some or the other kind of KYC would they have system, right, in their system. It is mandatory to do any kind of financial transactions to have a KYC. But with decentralized finances, you can transfer money without any KYC instantly. That is what this brings us. These are the applications, DeFi's and NFTs. What are NFTs? NFTs are it's quite difficult to explain. Okay, they're unique. Let's say I have a 10 rupees note and you have a 10 rupees note. Let's say we're going to exchange it. I will give my 10 rupees note to you and I'll take from yours. But does anybody lose or gain? No, right? Both are of same value. I'm not going to gain anything. She's not. You are not going to lose anything. Both are going to have same value. Those are fungible. Fungible tokens means interchangeable tokens. These are tokens that are not interchangeable. That means each token is unique. Bitcoins also, you can exchange one Bitcoin for other Bitcoin. But NFT tokens are created in such a way that they cannot be exchanged for something else, because each and every single token will have different value. It could be a piece of art, it could be a digital art, it could be an accessory in the game, it could be anything. It could be digital real estate. Digital real estate. It could be okay. Anything could be an NFT. Coming to the last part I'm going to tell about the industry setup. I think we have already up to 7 o'clock. I'll not going to get in deep with this. There are many applications. We have talked about cross-border payments, asset management, right? Agriculture also is a very good industry. Certificates, healthcare is also going to benefit. Certificate means any authenticity of the certificate can be integrated with blockchain. I have received a certificate from one of the universities that is on Bitcoin blockchain. I can prove that I really have got this certificate from this university. I can show to anyone and prove also. So I need not run behind the university to give me an additional proof that yes, I've actually got the certificate from you. And healthcare systems are also going to benefit. Voting mechanisms. Even though today we have what so much technological advancement, everything is going digital. But why not voting? We every time an election happens, the political parties say that the EVM has been hacked, EVM has been hacked. But uh, why not an electronic voting system? Because once, if we do an electronic voting system in the current state, okay, without involving blockchain, all of the political parties are not going to come after you for votes. They are going to go and invest all their resources in finding the best hacker in the world to hack the voting system. That is what they are going to do, right? That is why voting systems are not yet existing. This totally digital voting system. With blockchain, we can have a non-hack-proof voting system that will work efficient. Okay, cross-border payments, supply chain, automobile, personal identity, digital governments, also insurance. We have discussed it. DeFi. If anything, let's say there's an accident that happens to your car, and your car would have certain IoT devices that is going to immediately update that information to the insurance blockchain, and there is a immediate proof. There is an authentic proof that okay, this happened at this moment, at this instant. That gives you an additional proof, and insurance people can also transfer the money to you without actually doing an on-site review. That will save them effort, that will save them money also, correct? And it will be much shifter. These are all the industries, just a few of them, but there are a lot more. I think little less time, I'll not be able to explain them all. These are a few of the industries that I have listed here. There are many more that can be impacted and get benefited from blockchain. Okay, I will share this link with you. This slides link. Okay, you can find these references. That's all from my end. Any questions? So please go ahead. Please go ahead and ask your questions.
Sir, kindly check the chat box for questions. Sir.
Okay, sure. There is DeFi. What is collateral going to be? Just cryptocurrency, or who is issuing? Okay. What is collateral going to be? You have to keep certain cryptocurrencies as collateral. Let's say you have Bitcoin, but you don't want to spend the Bitcoin. You need cash urgently. You need certain crypto, but you don't have cash, but you have Bitcoins, but you don't want to sell the Bitcoin. You're going to keep the Bitcoin as collateral and uh, take loans in some other cryptocurrencies, which can be easily converted to or something like USDT or DAI or some other stable coin. Take that cryptocurrency as a loan, then pay it off with interest. So when you're paying it off with interest, who is going to give that loan? The person who is actually giving you the DAI. There are other people. It is a decentralized network, right? So there is someone who is ready to give his cryptocurrency, stable coins as loans. What he is going to earn, the person who is giving the money is going to earn the interest that you are going to give back. What you are going to earn from this, your major cryptocurrency, that is the Bitcoin, is not sold. It is, even though you had a financial crunch, you're not selling this, you're just keeping it as a collateral, and it could increase value also over time, right? By the time you return back the loan, the cryptocurrency that you have kept as collateral, Bitcoin could increase in value. That is one of the benefit you get. Can blockchain be used outside of cryptocurrency? Yes. There are blockchains like private blockchains. Private blockchains like Hyperledger. Hyperledger is building a lot of permission blockchains. So without any cryptocurrencies there, you may have cryptocurrency, you may not have cryptocurrency. It's up to you. It's most prominently used by the enterprises who want their privacy to be maintained and don't want their information to be shared with the public. Only few necessary people should be able to see the data. In such use cases, you can use blockchains without cryptocurrency. Okay, how does SHA-256 algorithm work? Okay, I'm going to give one uh, example here about hashes, right? SHA-256 is a hashing algorithm. What is hashing? Hashing is create a unique fingerprint. I'm going to use SHA-256 as a hashing algorithm. I'm going to hash this. This, what you see here, right? What you see here is the unique fingerprint of blockchain. This is a word. This word's unique fingerprint is this. It will not change. Even if I do it 100 times, it will not change. Okay, I'll go again. I'm going to type it. Okay. It is not going to change. It is going to remain 625 DA, the same information. But if I change capital B to small b, let's see. Remember, it is starting with 625 DA44. Okay. Six. I've only changed this capital letter to small letter. That's all. It has generated a totally different finger. So like this, what happens in a blockchain is it is going to have data, a lot of data. Okay, I'm going to show you that as well. Any other questions? Uh, please type it out in the comment section. This will be too much. Okay, let's do the signature transaction. Okay. I'm going to sign a transaction. This is a private key and a public key. So we need the combination of these two to do a transaction. So I'm going to do a transaction of $1 to Aditya. Shrikant is sending transaction of $1 to Aditya, and this is my private key. Okay, I'm going to sign this transaction with my private key. With my private key, I'm signing this. This is the signature of the message. Signature does not look like what we usually have. This is the digital signature that has been generated. Okay. While verifying, someone who is verifying, he will use my public key. This is again asymmetric cryptography that is quite out of scope for this section, for this discussion. If someone tries to tamper with the message and change the message from $1 to $10 and try to verify, it is going to fail. Okay. So as long as the message remains the same, they'll be able to verify it clearly. Right? The transactions looks like this. Same $20 from account to account and okay. Oh, I'm not sharing. Am I sharing the? Oh, sorry. I was had not shared my screen. Sorry, sorry. I'll share it. I'll explain it once again. So we can see this, right? And there is this message from me to Aditya. $1. This is the message, and this is my private key. I'm going to sign this message with my private key. Okay, this is the message signature. It is going to look like this. Next, someone in the middle, whoever is the miner who takes the responsibility of verifying the transaction, he has to verify whether did I actually agree to send Aditya $1. Okay, if someone does tamper with the message and it becomes changes from $1 to $10 and it has to verify, it is verification is going to fail. Instead of that, if it is just $1 and try to verify, it will pass. Okay. The same thing is happening here in transaction. $20 here. The amount is $20 from one account to some other account, and private keys signing. This verification is also same. The blockchain looks like this. So blockchain is filled with transactions, right? So this is the first block. Then there is a second block and multiple transactions in the block. Instead of 20, if I make it 200, the whole block signature fails and the block also fails, and everything after it also fails. So if you alter anything once it has been returned, the chain breaks. That is an immediate notification that someone has tried to tamper with the network and tried to add an invalid transaction into the blockchain. So that can be stopped instantly. Not instantly, very quickly. Okay. Even though he has changed his transaction in his blockchain, assume this is my blockchain, I'm changing from 20 to 200, it will be invalid in my blockchain, but others blockchain, other 2 and 3. So this is peer A. This is peer A. This is one person whose blockchain is running like this, correct? But others, peer B and peer C, have the actual record where it is still $20. So they, I would have to refer to their blockchains to get my blockchain updated and to be correct. That is what needs to happen. Okay, next question. What is the difference between Solidity, Viper, and Chaincode? Okay, the difference is they are different programming languages. You can use Solidity and Viper and Yule to write smart contracts for Ethereum. Chaincode has to be used if you're trying to write smart contracts on Hyperledger. So Chaincode can be written in Java, Node.js, Golang, and I think there's one more language. So three languages can be used to write chain code. Okay, chain code is nothing but smart contracts. Okay, chain code is not code. Sorry, I made a mistake. Solidity and Viper are code programming languages. Chain code is not a programming language. Chain code is similar to smart contracts. It's nothing but smart contracts on a hyperledger. It's called chain code. Every cryptocurrency has a source code. So what is the use of it? Can I do anything with it? Okay. I did not understand this question here. Every cryptocurrency has a source code. So what is the use of it? So not source code. Okay, there source code will be there. It is built on code, but not everybody will be able to access it. There are few developers who are really looking to build that, and they will be only able to change the source code. That cannot be changed just because they want to change. It has. They can only change if everybody in the network agrees, and it goes for a voting. Ethereum 2.0 that is coming up, that is not just some individual's idea. It's everybody has to vote together to and form a consensus and have majority. Only then new implementations, new bug fixes can be done to the network. Okay, that is the very code level. That those codes are written in C, C++, and Rust. Those languages. And coming to smart contracts, we can build applications. Okay, we can build multiple applications. Whatever applications we want, we can build on top of that. Okay, they are going to provide the network. Make use of this network and build an application. Are there any drawbacks of using blockchain? Yeah, blockchain. Drawbacks means what could happen? It's a little slow compared to the traditional systems for now. And one more drawback is the security is your own concern. Like you are responsible for your security, nobody else. You have to take care of the security of your cryptocurrencies. If you lose password, your Google password or Facebook password, Google and Facebook is going to help you recover your account. But here, if you lose your private keys, you lose your money. That and also it's little bit complex for general public to understand. Interoperability, there are drawbacks means like interoperability is quite difficult. One blockchain does not speak to the other blockchain. They are all different. They do not speak to each other. So if they could speak to each other, we can build still more innovative applications. So there have been trying to solve that issues as well. For example, Polkadot is called as the mother of all blockchains. So you can connect your blockchain to that and work with it. Which area is blockchains are not beneficial? So in which area blockchains are not beneficial? Where you don't really need this. So yeah, it could be any field, but if your field does not require a decentralized working, it works with a centralized system, then you don't have to build a decentralized network to do all this. So we should not simply go for blockchain because it is new and cool and everything. Only if you really find this use case, this is the best use case to go for blockchain, we should go. We should make use of it. Okay. Any other questions? NFTs only allows Ethereum. So there are different cryptocurrencies that are built on top of Ethereum blockchain. Okay, that allows NFTs. Not all NFTs are interchangeable, but we can buy NFT using Ethereum. It's possible. Only allows Ethereum. Not really. Not really. You can build NFT platforms on Binance Smart Chain, on Polkadot, or any other. It's possible. We can do it. We can do it. Okay. I think time is up. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Had a really good session with you all.
Thank you, sir, for wisdom and guidance. Good evening, sir.
Thank you.